Hi everybody, I'm Lacy Schoen with Real Women, Real Success. And this is something we're doing a little bit different this week. Many of you know that I have been telling you I want to do interviews with professional women and phenomenal women leaders on the topic of women competing in the workplace. And that is exactly what I'm doing today. This is our inaugural video on interviewing a wonderful woman, Karen Roper, who is not only a dear friend of mine and one of my best jewelry customers, but also has just retired recently from a very, very successful career in executive leadership for the County of Orange in California. And we were talking a little bit about women competing in the workplace, and so I want to talk to Karen about that today. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this for me.
I'm so excited.
I really appreciate it. So I'm going to share with you some stats, and then we're going to talk about them. You've heard me say before, women are 50% of the population, and we're 57% now of college graduates. We're 5% of Fortune 500 CEOs, and I read a study this week that there are more CEOs named David than there are women CEOs in the United States. Isn't that incredible? And then we only get 2.7% of venture capital from investment in entrepreneurs, meaning men get 97% of investment capital. So the question for me becomes, why are we not in those leadership positions, right? And I'm really starting to hear from a lot of people watching these videos, and that I'm doing speaking engagements who are in the audience, that competing among women is still really prevalent among all age groups and among all sectors. So my question to you is, what do you think is the reason for this? You got 30 plus, more than that, years under your belt as an amazingly successful professional. What are your thoughts?
I think it's hard to break tradition and perception. I've seen throughout my career with the county where women competed against women because they thought that it was going to help them advance, something like a negative competition, when actually when they were competing against one another, men lost respect for them in the workplace. Mm-hmm. But I think it's tradition and it's perception. Perception from people thinking that women have less skills than men, and it's a barrier that has to be overcome.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So do you think then, it sounds like you think we're holding each other back. Do you think that's true?
I do, and I actually was at a point in my career, because I was so desperate to advance. I really wanted to move to the next level to help people, not for my own gain per se, but because I wanted to help so many people in Orange County. And to do that, I wanted to get to the next level in a position.
Sure. And
so I fell prey to falling into those mistakes where I was actually competing negatively against women. Mm-hmm. And I realized, I saw that I was doing it. I didn't like the person that I was. And instead I remembered, for me personally, the most important thing is character. And what really changed my life was when I focused on character, integrity, and building my own skills, and then building relationships, which was really, really key to success. Building relationships not just with men, but with women. And when I found that we were competing against one another, if I felt that negativity, I would go to that person and try to build a relationship. And then when I built the relationship, if they ended up having success, instead of being jealous or feeling insecure, I cheered that person on, that woman on, because I realized that there's strength in numbers and that we're better if we're supporting one another. And through those lessons that I learned, I actually gained success because I quit being insecure and jealous and worked with women.
Well, everybody that knows you knows that you are a tremendous success. There's so much that you just said that I'm trying to decide which trail to go down. One of the things you said that was interesting is that you noticed you were competing and you stopped the behavior. I have an acquaintance that was a Marine, a female, who runs a leadership training company now, and she said something similar, but she said she didn't realize she was doing it, and when she questioned herself as to why, she wasn't really sure. Here she was teaching leadership and she wasn't sure why she was competing with other women. So your reason was just to gain a higher level position, and then you self-assess. So
Yeah.
not a lot of people do that. Do you think self-assessment is a key part of character?
It absolutely is, because if you're worried about how you're building your own character and your own integrity, then you're going to be thinking about your own actions. And when I said to you that I was desperate to get to the next level, again, it was because I care so deeply. I felt like my job was a mission in life, a calling in life, not just for pay or for status. And so that's why I wanted to move to the next level, because I had a vision for how so many people could be helped. And I also realized through the whole process of self-assessment, when I was doing that, I didn't feel good about myself. And so I wanted to go back and acknowledge my failings and build those relationships. Some people were open to building the relationships, some people weren't, and that's just something that you have to be prepared to deal with. But as a person of character and integrity, you do it anyways because it's the right thing to do. You're not insecure about yourself, you build other people up, and in the process you'll be built up.
Nice. There's a story I want to ask you about that I am already privy to, but before I do that, a lot of the folks watching this video may not know what you have done in your career. So would you share a little bit about your contribution to the world, which is magnificent and significant?
I would love to. So during my 35-year career with the county, I had the privilege and blessing of helping veterans and seniors and homeless and victims of domestic violence and those that were mentally ill, those that needed affordable housing, those that needed shelter, really a whole network of care for people, building a whole system. It was just such a blessing to be able to know that my work had lasting impact on people's lives for generations to come. So it was truly a blessing.
So when you got that position, one of the things that I am learning is that women's advancement, it's really important to have a strategy. And we talk a lot about how women move up the ladder, and it's a fact that women are often very much assessed on what they've already accomplished rather than their vision. It's not something that women get mentored towards, is having that strategy. Did you share that to advance in your career? Did you share with people, here's what my vision is if I get this position? Did that help you?
It did, because I believe that I was there for a calling, and so all throughout my career I was sharing with people that our work was so important that it wasn't about us. It was about the people that we were called to serve, because I believe that wholeheartedly. So throughout my career I shared that, but I think that the key is building strategic relationships also. So you can share with some people and it's great and you guys have camaraderie, but sometimes you really need to build strategic relationships. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that people with a vision and status that can also work with you to take the strategy to make impact in a positive way.
I love that you said that. So one of my most popular video on YouTube is Why Women Compete and What You Can Do About It. And then I just did a follow-on that added on one strategy that helps is leveraging, meaning your relationships. So I love that you said that, because what you're really saying is one of the strategies to dealing with other competitive women. You also mentioned some people don't change. You can't always build those relationships.
That's right.
So you have to have the strategic relationships with the right influencers to help mitigate the negative impacts of that competition. Would you say that's right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so I know a personal story about you that I found stunning when I heard it, and I think it's a great example of how all of us could build our character. It's about two women competing for the same job and how they handled that. Would you tell that story? Because I think it's amazing.
I would love to. So in 2008, our department was going through a transition, and the department head had left, and there was a woman there that was appointed to be the interim director, and she had been operating as interim director about 6 months until the county went out for recruitment for the permanent position. And I loved working for her. She had such a heart for the mission, super smart, collaborative, team player, didn't have a lot of ego, just like the ideal boss that you'd want to work for. And she has character and integrity. But at any rate, so I was so excited to support her, put everything that I had as an employee behind her to make sure that she was successful. But what was interesting is that there were all of these people, and I'm talking stakeholders in cities, stakeholders in nonprofits, department heads in other county departments, that kept pushing me and encouraging me to apply for the job. And I felt guilty about it because I really respected this woman that was in this position. I wanted her to be the boss. And then a wise person, my husband, said, if you both apply for the job, you increase the chances of getting a good person that cares about the mission of the organization and the people that you're serving. Because he knows and supports that my work was a calling in life. It just wasn't a job. So I approached her and I said to her that people were encouraging me and that I felt guilty and I didn't want to apply for the job because I wanted to support her. And she said, oh my gosh, I hope you will apply for the job because I would love to work for you. So I said, oh, well, if we both apply for it, then hopefully one of us will get it. And either of us will be thrilled to work for the other person. And that's exactly what we did. And amazingly enough, I interviewed for the job. I was offered the job. She supported me wholeheartedly and became my deputy director. And, you know, I was working in a time when there was the whole downturn in the housing market. The county lost millions of dollars in tax revenue. We had budget cuts. We had layoffs. In a time where we had increasing need for people in the community. And that relationship that we had, because we had a relationship of trust, common goals for the mission, we just got so excited to build a vision and change Orange County. And we did that, building other relationships, but it was because we started with trust and support for one another. And if you have that, you can do anything, even with extremely limited resources in an extremely difficult environment. And I'm just so happy that I had that opportunity, and that person is still a great friend to this day.
Yeah, I know. Well, what you've just described is, and I know you all are thinking this too, is a tremendous amount of character in both women. And that's something that we hope to build among the ranks of women in the professional setting, but it's not often reality. So what advice would you give to someone who is dealing with a woman that does not want to concede that may the best man win and will support each other however it turns out? What advice, other than having the right relationships, which I think is really important, and having a strategy, is there anything else?
I think you just want to continue to be honest with that person and acknowledge if there's tension and acknowledge the situation at hand, and to be able to talk to them and to explain that it's not good for us to compete against one another, and that when we do that, and not just pointing to that person. A lot of times when I'm talking about a situation, I say, I find when I do this, rather than making someone like pointing you, and saying, I find when I do this, I get negative reactions. I don't know about you, but this has been my experience. But imagine how much we could do if we work together. Right. And even if it doesn't change, just continuing to try to, like refinement with sandpaper, just building that relationship. And even if that person never comes around, you were true to your character and your integrity, and you continue to keep yourself accountable to acknowledge that uncomfortable situation. Right. And you're never going to get out of uncomfortable situations. It's life. Right. At home, at the workplace, your family members, relationships take work. Yeah. And you have to be committed to work on the relationship, and you become a superior professional because you're building your character and your integrity. Right.
Okay, so that's a phenomenal story. I want to ask you another question about it. Well, maybe not about that story, but just about competition in general. How do you think men view it when women are actively competing against each other?
A couple of things. First of all, I think that they lose complete respect for the women when they see them competing against one another like that. The other thing is that for those men that genuinely feel men should be advanced above women, they see that as an advantage to their agenda to continue to advance men. Now, I want to be careful about saying that, because for me personally, I'm so thankful for the opportunity that I had in the county, because I started at 17 years old and worked my way up, and I did it by building relationships, building character and skills. But I know that there are still men that have that perspective, but I have to say the three ingredients that I mentioned to you, I think, were what really helped me to be successful in the county, even when men felt like that and acted like that. Right. But there was a lot of opportunity for women if they would do the things that I mentioned to you, which is build your character, work on your skills, and build relationships.
Nice.
If you do those things, you can overcome those challenges.
Yeah.
But again, I think, me personally, I think men lose their respect for women when they see them acting like that.
So, Karen, I had an interesting experience this week. You know, I got published in February.
Yes.
I've been writing about the 5 innate female strengths that we have that we can leverage for success. And I've been doing some speaking on that. And someone who was in one of my audiences took my work and put it on her website as her own. So I was able to get that handled, and I was able to get it handled with a minimum of angst, but it was shocking. And I think there's nothing that takes away that shock of when someone steals your work or takes credit for something you've done. Have you ever had this happen, and how did you handle it?
I have had it happen, and I had to, there were different situations that had to be handled differently.
Okay.
So in the county, when there were people that were trying to take credit for my ideas or my work, I had to really sit back and assess the whole situation. And I had to say to myself, is the advancement of our mission still happening? And what will happen if I try to stand up and say, what are you doing? You stole my idea, my work. And so I realized that approaching it that way wasn't the right way to do it, but being more strategic about when was the appropriate time to really talk to that person, and to be able to say, I'm glad that you thought my idea was good. It really makes me happy that you valued my idea and my work enough to advance it. And I'm just hoping in the future that maybe perhaps we could work together, because truly those that are in higher places, I think, value when they really see the acknowledgement of team effort.
Right.
Because when somebody stands up and says it was my idea, my work, most people know that it's a team. It
Right.
takes a team. And
Right.
sometimes in your case, it's individual work. But for me, in the public sector and government, a lot of the work, you can't get it done without a team.
Right.
And so that's how I handled it, because the times where I tried to stand up and say, this was my idea, I just felt like that character.
Doesn't feel good.
It didn't feel good. I was trying to draw attention to myself. That's not the right strategy.
Right.
The right strategy is, you know how they say timing is everything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When is the strategic time to talk to that person in a kind way that's going to build a relationship, not isolate and break relationships?
Right.
To acknowledge them, and they'll know.
Yeah.
But always in a way that that person or the people don't think that your whole objective is, I'm hurt, it was my idea, you stole it, but rather, thank you, we're accomplishing a grander mission together. And if the situation happened again, just to try to bring it back to that, let's talk
Right.
about it's a team, it takes a team.
There's a few things that come to mind. Number one, you're showing tremendous leadership in mentoring this person, absolutely. But going back to those relationships that you said are so important, one of the things I tell women is that it's so important for people to know what they know. Men are really good at talking about their accomplishments and what they got done, and women like to be more modest, as a general rule. I know that's a generality, but we're working with generalities here. And one of the things I think is really important is for women to get comfortable finding productive ways that make sense to talk about their accomplishments or their ideas or their mission. When you talk about having relationships, one of the things that came to mind is sometimes when someone steals an idea, if it's been shared with key influencers of character, they immediately know
Oh, yeah.
that it was your idea when it comes up.
Yes.
And so that's another strategy, isn't it, is to really share your good ideas and your strategies with the right people who are influencers when you build those relationships, so that if someone tries to do that, they know.
Absolutely. I agree.
Have you had that experience?
I have. And actually, once people get to know you and they trust your character and they know your work, they know what you're all about, they can see your fingerprints and you don't have to worry about it. But I think being a person of self-evaluation or self-reflection, I always would go back to, I'm not perfect, I made a lot of mistakes, but
we all have.
Try to go back. You know, I want to ask myself, okay, I'm really upset about this. What that person did is ugly.
Yeah.
And I'm hurt. That was my idea. That was my work. But let's think about, what is my motivation? Why do I want credit for it? And in some cases, I would say, you know what? For this time, let them get the credit, because the work got done and people got served.
Mm-hmm.
But then in the appropriate time try to deal with it. And like we were talking about earlier, Lacy, in dealing with competitive issues with women, the same thing. When someone steals your work, some people are open to it, some people refuse to acknowledge it. You can repair the relationship. Other people, they just don't want to deal with it. They're not interested in building character or integrity.
They don't care.
They're just like, they have blinders on.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. If you have that, success will follow.
Well, and with your mission and your career, you went as far as you wanted to go. And I think, if I'm reading between the lines right, your message to the viewers might be, you may win a battle, but be in it for the long haul. Handle the character side, but also have the difficult conversations, because it's part of leadership. And you'll come out, if you build those relationships, on the right side in the long term. Would you say that that's an accurate assessment?
I would definitely say that. I would say that it's not a cookie cutter model, because people are different and you have to use different strategies, because people are wired differently. And so how you, I don't want to say confront, but you address the issue. Because that's what really helped me through self-evaluation. How am I going to address the issue? And I knew that different strategies and approaches worked with different people to try to get to the root of the problem.
Conflict resolution is definitely one of your skills, and one that's really, really important when it comes to women competing with women. Do you have any last parting advice, especially for some of the young women professionals who are just starting in their careers, maybe having some disheartening experiences? What would you say to them?
I would say that you just want to focus on building your character and integrity. Focus on building your skills. Keep building those relationships. If you find that you make a mistake and you don't feel good about it, acknowledge your failure to people around you. Find people that you can trust to hold you accountable, to be that person of character and that person of integrity, and keep your eyes focused on the mission. Don't let a failure knock you off or out of the game. Acknowledge your mistake and keep going. And if somebody else has done you wrong, approach them and try to make it right. Always deal with problematic situations with the end game being resolution. You always want to have positive relationships to the extent that you possibly can.
Excellent. Okay, let's wrap up with one more. I want to pick your brain for one more thought. We started out with these big figures and facts about women at the top. And do you feel that this issue of competing really impacts our overall numbers at the top? And if so, what encouragement would you give to women at large on how to think about this?
For me, just reflecting back on my career, I addressed it through building relationships, because there were challenges with trying to advance into executive level positions. And I would say that the most important factor for me was just continuing to try to build strategic relationships. Because if you can build strategic relationships and you can prove yourself that your heart is about doing the right thing, people want to get behind that and they want to support you. So that would be my encouragement.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending the time to do this. I know you're really busy, and I wanted to get you on camera and have you share some of your expertise. So
it was a privilege. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for watching. Go out there and have a great week. Always remember that I'm your biggest fan, and we'll see you next week.